We knew that day was going to be with severe weather. The way it turned out, obviously, was a completely different story.
It's been 10 years since a historic tornado tore through western Massachusetts.
I ran downstairs to tell the kids to, get out of the kitchen.
Shocking and impacting families across our communities.
That's when we realized, oh my gosh, how lucky we are to be alive.
Cities and towns came together to rebuild.
It took some time, but in the long run, we came out on top again.
Western Mass News at 6 starts now.
Tonight marks 10 years since that devastating tornado hit Western Mass. Good Tuesday evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Chris Pisano.
And I'm Jordyn Jagolinzer. An EF3 tornado touched down right here in Springfield, killing 3 people in Western Mass and leaving more than 500 people in our community homeless.
This was the scene in downtown Springfield at 4:38 p.m. as you heard church bells rang to remember the damage left behind by the 2012 tornado 10 years ago.
And we have team coverage tonight on the 10th anniversary. Audrey Russo is standing by in Springfield, which was hit hard as the tornado crossed the river and touched down.
And Massatili is at the other end of the tornado's path in Munson. But we begin tonight with Dave Manson, who covered the tracks of the tornado as it touched down here in Western Mass. And he joins us now live from our MGM studios, a location that was hit hard 10 years ago, Dave, but before it had been built.
Indeed, Chris, a big difference 10 years make. And I'm just thinking that 10 years at this hour, we were just beginning to see the damage that was caused in downtown Springfield and all up and down the valley. Church bells ringing now downtown as they do every night around 6 o'clock. But in Springfield, community members and city leaders are remembering the day and the damage that was caused by the tornado as it tore through the city's south end, right where we are. Western Mass News reporter Audrey Russo live outside City Hall with more on that tonight. Audrey?
At 4:38, city officials held a moment of silence and then a bell ringing commemoration, because 4:38 is when that tornado passed over the city of Springfield 10 years ago. Now, that commemoration is something that they do every year, but on the 10-year mark of this event, local residents are taking extra time to reflect on how the tornado changed the way they view the city.
That window, and the porch.
Gordon Dodge showed us where the 2011 tornado damaged his Springfield house. But we didn't have to imagine what it looked like. He brought out pictures of what the natural disaster did to his home and neighborhood that day 10 years ago.
We were on the outside edge of the storm.
Gordon lives near Pope Francis Preparatory School, which back then was Cathedral High School. He was in Northampton when the tornado actually hit, but it didn't take long for him to notice that things weren't how he left them.
I got as far as Old Brook Road, which is the next street over, and I had to park the car there because there's a big tree down there.
This is not an event where you celebrate, we mark it.
Springfield Mayor Dominic Sarno holding a moment of silence for the lives lost and the countless other ways the city was changed forever that day.
The strength, the hope, the resiliency of the people and the businesses of the city of Springfield.
The South End Community Center, Cathedral High School, and countless other homes and buildings were damaged, something Gordon doesn't need pictures to remember clearly.
Is it a day that you will ever forget?
Not quite.
Mayor Sarno noted during his remarks that the 3 people who lost their lives during the incident didn't live in Springfield, but he still wanted to memorialize them and the loss to the greater Western Mass region. Live in Springfield, Audrey Russo for Western Mass News.
Audrey, thanks. Well, just a little while ago, the Munson community gathered at the First Congregational Church as townspeople recalled the damage that was suffered there some 10 years ago today. For one Munson resident, she remembers the day she lost her childhood home and how the community rallied together amidst the middle of this disaster. Western Mass News reporter Matt Satilli continues our team coverage live with Munson with more on that. Matt?
Well, Dave, as you just mentioned, people filing out here for a ceremony that took place at 5:30, and the community came together today just as they did 1 decade ago. We spoke with one resident who recalls that fateful day and how the community rallied behind families like her own.
There's no way a tornado could come ever through here.
Marissa Phipps arrived home from school when disaster struck, and she couldn't believe it when her sister cried out about impending danger.
Didn't think she was serious whatsoever. And then she started screaming and crying, hysterically.
She credits a text from a friend and quick thinking for helping her and her sisters make it to the basement and survive the tornado.
No one had even told us. We obviously wouldn't be here.
Her sisters took cover under piles of laundry, blankets, anything they could find. And after making it outside, she was distraught to look back at where her childhood house once stood.
I didn't want to see what it looked like, but I turned around, started crying.
And after losing everything,
it was tough. It was a house that we loved, and we had so many great memories.
One teacher at Munson High School generously offered her family a temporary place to stay.
My athletic director at the time, Sarah Shaw, gave us her grandmother's home out in Palmer.
She tells Western Mass News the disaster brought the community closer together in support of families like hers.
I knew people who I didn't even know knew me, just from my parents or my family members in general, who donated so many clothes, shoes, donated food to us.
She says it actually feels longer than a decade after making many new memories in her new home.
I still think about those memories, and they will always be with me, but they feel so long ago that these memories these new memories are just taking over.
And whether it feels like forever ago, like it does for Phipps, or like yesterday, today we reflect and remember. Reporting live in Munson, Matt Satilli, Western Mass News.
Matt, thanks. Well, one of the buildings destroyed by the tornado had children and educators inside. Thankfully, they all walked away that day safely. We're joined by the former CEO, now retired CEO at Square One, Joan KAGAN. Joan, good to see you.
Nice to see you too, Dave.
They're bringing two retirees out of retirement.
That's right.
So, Joan, let's talk about that day. I mean, we heard all of the warnings, but I think none of us ever expected to be hit by a tornado. The children were in the school at the time.
Yes, they were. That center holds 100 children, infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. It was the end of the day, so there were only about 35 children left in our center. We also had social workers and home visitors in another building, and then, of course, our administration in a third building. So 3 buildings were impacted that day.
But everyone was safe, but the tornado just devastated that building.
It did. Yeah. It devastated all 3 buildings, and but we all made it out safely. There were 35 children and 35 staff, teachers, administrators, and social workers, and everybody got out without a scratch.
It was really miraculous, wasn't it?
It really was. We were on high alert during the day. We were hearing the news with the threats of storms coming, severe storms. So we had our staff on alert. We had our center directors making sure that they kept their TVs on, and so we were going along, and all of a sudden I heard one of the staff in my building say, "Oh wow, look, everything is flying by sideways." And I yelled, "Get away from the window." And somebody else yelled tornado right at the same time. And then we yelled at people, all the staff, to get downstairs into the basement, including one young man who was fixing our air conditioner who wanted to flee, and we said, "No, you're coming with us."
But Square One rebuilt stronger than ever now.
Yes, we did. We are a resilient we are a resilient agency, and we have very committed staff who really care about the children and families. And there was never a doubt that we would not rebuild. And as a matter of fact, the tornado happened on a Wednesday evening, and on Monday morning we had a place for all the children and all the staff. So we were back in business 4 days later.
All right, Joan, we are out of time. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Hard to believe it's been 10 years, but enjoy retirement.
Thank you very much.
All right. That wraps up things from here for right now. Let's head back to the studio. Jordyn.
All right, Dave, thanks. And for a full recap of our Western Mass tornado coverage, you can be sure to download our free Western Mass News streaming app to your mobile and streaming devices.
New developments on a fire that we first reported on this morning at the Indian Motorcycle Building in Springfield. The Springfield Fire Department tells Western Mass News there were 2 separate fires in the State Street building that were intentionally set. According to officials, the fire was knocked down by sprinklers in the building just before 11 a.m. No injuries reported, and Springfield Arson and Bomb Squad is still investigating.